Greetings, everyone. Brett here with Hammerhead Model Making with a brand new episode for you today. And today we are going to be working on Hobby Boss's F8F Bearcat in 1/72nd scale. Now, this kit is kind of labeled as a easy kit, easy to put together kit, and you'll see why the part count is quite low. You can see here that the wings are all one piece, the upper fuselage is all one piece, engine and cowling are all one piece. But don't let that fool you. This actually isn't a terrible kit. And so I got this kit because it is part of the Jolly Rogers collection that I am building. And it was really kind of the only kit available in 72nd scale. And so I went and bought it. Knowing that it was labeled as this easy kit, and was like, you know what, that's all right. As long as it fits in my collection, I'll be good. Surface detail of the kit actually is not bad. It's got nice engraved panel lines. The fit of the kit is quite nice for the most part, and the details that are present are generally pretty nice. One of the things that I did want to improve upon, though, was the fact that through the open wheel wells, you can look into the back side of the R2800 engine. And on the kit, there's nothing there. It's just a big empty space. On the real aircraft, though, I mean, you can see the entire back end of the engine through the wheel wells. So I wanted to try and, kind of scratch build my way into adding detail into this area. So using various bits from the spare part. In fact, the whole back end of the engine that I'm using is a part of a depth charge that I got off of an old Accurate Miniatures kit in 1/48 scale. I'm using parts of the sprue itself to represent some of the ducting for the oil cooler and everything. I'm using solder, I'm using plastic, I'm using wire. I'm kind of throwing everything at this in terms of scratch building to add some detail into this area. Because you can see here on the kit that it's quite a cavernous area. And now, in reality, no one's really going to see this unless they pick up the model and directly look into the wheel wells. But it's kind of one of those things where I know it's there, and it was a fun challenge for me, and just kind of a test of, how far can I push my scratch building skills. So that was kind of why I undertook this. Also, in addition, the kit's really simple. I mean, in reality, you could probably have this kit built up, honestly, like start to finish, even including paint and decaling. You could probably have this kit built in under 48 hours. No problem. And so I just wanted to add some more complexity to the kit a little bit. So right now I'm just kind of adding some details to the back end of the engine. I know it kind of looks like a smiley face. That was unintentional, but that's just kind of how it worked out. And I am going off of reference pictures for a lot of these, but I'm not going for like exact replication. These bars that I'm adding here are parts of the engine mount that are visible through the wheel wells. So getting those put in, and then getting some ribbing detail on the front surface of what would be the wing spar there. And so it's just this was a fun exercise in scratch building, and really didn't require a lot of complicated engineering and thinking. But you can see I kind of that back half of the engine there, I actually kind of built it around the locating pin, and so that it for one, it hides the locating pin, but also just kind of acts as an anchor point for that detail. So what I'm adding here is on the inboard wing roots of the wings, you can see it's got those open those openings, and that would be your intercooler inlet and your oil cooler inlet and your things like that. So and normally those would get ducted back from the wings back into the engine compartment. So that's what I'm adding here. So these would be I believe these ones are the oil cooler inlets, and then you'll see later on there's another one that I'll add, which will be the intercooler inlets. There was also a lot of wire detail, cabling and hoses and whatnot on the inboard, or on that front face of the wing root. So I'm adding some copper wire here, and adding that detail. So here's the intercooler inlets. And it's possible I have those reversed. My engineering skills are basic at best. I'm trying to get better at them, but they kind of wrap up and over the engine towards the back of it. So they're wrapping down that way, or I should say up. Everything's upside down. You can also see here that the actual landing gear doors are actually molded into the bottom of that fuselage piece. That's all one piece, by the way. And it's actually quite a testament to the slide molding technology they needed to use for that, because they got upper surface, lower surface of the wing, lower part of the fuselage, those landing gear doors, plus the openings, all in one mold. So, I mean, hats off to them for pulling that off on such a small kit. Just a few more details I'm adding here in plastic, and just to kind of liven this up. And again, you know, a lot of this won't be seen, but it's fun to know that it's there, and I'm quite pleased eventually with the final results there. So I think all in told, I probably spent about 3 or 4 nights, you know, an hour or two each night, working on all the scratch built details. So it really didn't take very long to, I mean, it didn't require much surgery of the actual kit. It was mainly just adding things. So usually when you're doing that kind of scratch building, it doesn't generally take you very long. You know, if you have to like cut things open to add things, that can take some time. But the cockpit is extremely simple. Honestly, it's just you got the pilot's headrest here that goes on, and then the gun sight that goes on. That's literally all the parts that go into the cockpit. The seats molded in, the instrument panels molded in. And as per my usual, I'm going to replace the gun sight with clear plastic, so that at least kind of looks good. The Bearcat has a small cockpit, so I mean, even if you were to try and add detail in there, it'd be really hard to be seen. Another thing is, I don't know if you noticed at the beginning that the canopy comes as one piece, so it's not, you know, front half and back half. So, I mean, unless you wanted to cut it open with a razor saw, you're going to have a closed canopy anyways. The other thing I can't help myself doing is detailing up a radial, even a radial like this, which is molded into the cowl. And it kind of presented itself with its own unique sets of challenges, because I had to try and figure out how to work out these ignition wires. And in the end, I ended up simplifying it a little bit by only adding half the wires that I should have. But I still think it'll look the part and looks decent and provides a little bit of extra detail in there. Although, truth be told, the engine actually still looks pretty decent in there. It would have been nice to have a separate engine, but again, can't fault them. It is labeled as a simple kit or easy to build kit. So I appreciate that they weren't necessarily trying to sacrifice the quality and detail and ease of a simplified construction. But there you go. That's kind of what you have to work with. So I just kind of basically pre-bent these wires and worked them down into the cylinder, and then tried to match them up as best I could to where the ignition ring would be on the front of the engine, and you know, just kind of hoped for the best there. But like I said, I just can't help myself detailing a radial. They always look so much better. So once I've got those in, it's just a matter of getting the wires glued and then trimmed, and you're good to go. I also decided to drill out the exhaust. Again, that stuff is molded in to the upper fuselage. And again, slide molding technology here, really quite nice. This is all one piece upper fuselage. The landing gear is a particularly strong point on this kit. It is very well detailed and very accurate to the references I had. The only thing I wanted to do was add brake cables, because they are quite prominent on the actual airplane. And so it's just a matter of kind of getting my wire bent and then glued in, and then I'm using some masking tape to kind of represent the fastener that would be around it. And it was a little tricky at first, but I got the hang of it eventually and was able to make it work. And you can see it actually has those big brake blocks on the inside of the wheel there, and where the brake cables actually lead into the hydraulic cables there. So, but again, the landing gear is well detailed, very nice, all one piece. That's all one piece. It's not like it's separate, you know, wheels to the strut and stuff. That's all one piece. So if you can deal with that, it builds up pretty nicely. And especially if you look at the actual reference pictures of the landing gear, the Bearcat had unique landing gear where they kind of fold in the middle. And so they fold into the center of the aircraft, but they're hinged at the center point. So they kind of bend one way and then fold in the other way. Very interesting, very neat. So with all the basic construction done, I can start priming a lot of these interior parts. So for this, I'm just using the Vallejo black primer and getting a lot of the more interior pieces painted before I can start doing my detail painting, final assembly, and then final painting. So what I like about the Bearcat is you pretty much only ever see the Bearcat in that dark sea blue overall paint scheme, but the interior parts like the wheel wells or the engine bay were that zinc chromate yellow. So there's really quite a striking contrast between, you know, the almost black paint job and then that bright yellow interior part. So it kind of helps add a little bit of color to an otherwise, you know, pretty uniform aircraft. I did keep the back of the engine separate just to make it easier to paint, because it would be painted differently than the actual surrounding structure. So just make it a little bit easier. Excuse me. For the interior, going with my standard cockpit interior green, and I really like the MIG color over some of the other competitors. This is that zinc chromate green, or yellow, I mean. The label is kind of worn off, but that's what it is. And I really, both these colors by MIG, I think, are really good, accurate representations of what the colors should be. I know there's a lot of different interpretations of what cockpit interior green is supposed to be. And also there's also different interior colors. You have like the bronze green and sometimes like a darker green, but in general, I like to use that MIG interior green and then the zinc chromate yellow. I think they both look really nice. So we're at this point, we're doing all the interior stuff. I like to try and get as much stuff painted, you know, when it's all the same color as I can. I was trying to figure out how I was going to mask around those wheel well covers, because when it actually comes time to painting the exterior, those are going to be quite visible, and you'll see later on how I ended up masking those. But that's probably the biggest annoyance I had with this kit, was the fact that those doors are molded integrated into that lower wing section, and it just makes for masking to be a little troublesome. But you know, ultimately it's something that can be overcome. So here we're just painting up some of the detail stuff with some Vallejo colors and a paintbrush. Nothing too difficult. Painting some ignition weeds here on the engine, and it was kind of, you know, this is the Bearcat was small. I don't know why I was expecting it to be as big as the Hellcat, but you kind of look at the Grumman airplanes through their development, and they always kind of seem to get a little bit bigger. And then you get the Bearcat, which was much smaller than the Hellcat. And so in 1/72nd scale, it's a very small kit, and it quite kind of left me surprised. So when it comes to the painting, this is kind of one of the errors that I make in here, is using Citadel's Nuln oil for a wash. I was kind of going for a bit of a grimy look, but in the end, it was too much, and I really should have gone with like a MIG panel wash there to do that. So, you know, live and learn. I think I was just wanting to try some new things, and I didn't want to have to gloss coat all this work, but there you go. So airing out my mistakes. You'll see later on that I try to correct it a little bit with some dry brushing. But yeah, I would do it differently if I did it again today. Painting the tires here. I know a lot of people will mask these, and you know, they have special circle cutters that they use to cut masks for tires, you know, especially in the armor world where you have to paint 20 plus road wheels or something. I just find it easier and faster just to do it by hand. And as long as there's a good little lip between the tire and the rim, and you get your paint thin consistently, it's really not that difficult to hand paint. Now, granted, when you're painting 2 reels as opposed to 20 on a tank, a little bit different, but still. So here, yeah, you can see I'm just trying to knock back that wash a little bit with some dry brush, and overall it gets pretty close. But like I said, I wouldn't use the Nuln Oil again, the Citadel wash again on a project like this. They're great on miniatures, fantastic on miniatures, but yeah, not my favorite for this type of application. I'll definitely stick with my MIG enamel washes. Much easier to work with, even though they do require a gloss coat over the paint job. So just hitting some dry brushing on some of the other parts here just to pick out some of the detail. Again, it's pretty crude and rough looking, but it'll be hard to see anyways. So now we can kind of start putting stuff together and get this thing assembled. So there goes the back half of my engine in there, kind of snugs in there pretty tight. We get the upper and lower fuselage parts put together. Again, you can see the fit here isn't terrible. I mean, the seam cleanup on that side there was minimal, but now you can still see a lot of that detail on the inside. And engine cowling just snaps into place. I mean, you could almost build a lot of this kit without glue. That's how tight a lot of these parts are, how tight the tolerances are. The nice thing about having a single piece, wing is, again, very little seam cleanup between the upper and lower surfaces. I mean, there is a mold seam there just because of the process of molding that, but it was like a couple passes with the razor blade or the X-Acto blade, and then some 400 grit sandpaper, and it's gone just like that. Literally took 5 minutes. So here we can apply the rest of the parts, get these all glued up. I think in total there was two sprues for the aircraft, and then one sprue for clear parts, and that was it. It was just, really, really simple basic kit. Decal for the instrument panel. This didn't totally fit. You kind of have to force it down in there, and it kind of wraps around onto the sides just a little bit, but again, you really won't see it. So applying the gun sight glass here, just a simple detail that always adds tremendous to the build, I think. So here's the one-piece canopy, just kind of slots down into place, and fit here was decent. Once I did get the glue on, you do kind of have to push it down a little bit in order to get it to sit properly, but once you do, then it's good to go. So you can see here I'm preparing for priming and painting. So I've got some foam installed in the engine, and then I also have foam installed in the wheel wells as well. It's hard to see here. And then for the canopy, just masking with Scotch tape. When I'm doing small canopies like this, Scotch tape is kind of my go-to, mainly because it sticks good. But you can see through it, so I find it easier to help me when cutting out the masks like this. And also remember to use a brand new blade when you're doing this. You run the risk of tearing the tape or causing it to be jagged if you're using a duller blade. So just make sure you're always using a nice fresh blade here. It'll make the job much easier, and reduce the risk of scratching the plastic and ruining your paint job. All right, because I knew this was going to be all one color, on the exterior, and I wasn't really going to be doing much masking, I went ahead and used the Vallejo primer for this one. If I was doing something a little more complex masking and whatnot, I would definitely not use the Vallejo primer. But you can see here how I masked the landing gear covers. Just I put tape on the inside, left the outside, the exterior part exposed, and then foam filling in the rest. And for the most part, it did a pretty good job of protecting it. I think I had to do a little bit of touch up, but nothing that was too difficult to deal with. The one thing I will say that I like about the Vallejo primer is it goes on, or I should say, once it dries really smooth and it looks great. So I will give them that. And for general application like this, it works just fine. So doing a little bit of a modeling layer to go underneath the blue, just to kind of help create some visual interest and contrast on the all blue paint job. Bearcats really kind of came at that weird time where they were introduced just as World War II was ending, but also right about the same time that jet aircraft were being introduced. And so they really didn't get a lot of action. They didn't see a lot of service. And so the aircraft never really got terribly dirty in weather. They were usually kept in really good condition, mainly just because of the nature of the fact that they weren't in, hardened combat for years and years on end, and were able to be maintained in a relatively peacetime condition. I know they did use some during the Korean War, but again, not extensively, and never in the kind of situation that the U.S. found itself during World War II. But I still wanted to be able to show just a little bit of variation in the overall paint job. So we're just applying this dark sea blue over everything. It's been thinned out enough that some of that white shows through. And then, even though the decal instructions I had didn't show it, reference pictures showed that it had this white flash on the tail there, so I made sure to paint that and make it a little bit more accurate. I have a hard time not putting ordnance on my aircraft, and it's probably a fault because I'll do it even when it doesn't necessarily make sense. But in this case, it came with rockets and bombs, so of course I'm going to put rockets and bombs on it. And also the other fact too is that I have to fill in all the mounting holes for the rockets and bombs if I didn't put them on, and I didn't really feel like doing that. So here we go, rockets and bombs on the Bearcat. Painting up the propeller. Pretty simple. Paint it black, and then you paint in this case, I painted the tips white first and then yellow. It just helps the yellow show up a little bit stronger. And then we paint the center hub aluminum. Pretty straightforward, and looks good. So with all the major painting done, we can go ahead and give it a gloss coat using my typical Alclad gloss, and give this whole thing a good coat. The late war Navy aircraft and post-war Navy aircraft were kept in a glossy state for the most part. So I knew going into this that I would be giving this a glossy paint job, and so basically I was really trying hard to give it a nice, good, even coat. So we go to a decal. So these are aftermarket decals. These aren't the Hobby Boss decals. This is from a company called CTA, which I believe is short for Cut Then Add. And all of the Jolly Rogers aircraft that I've built on the channel all come from the same decals. So it's actually a set. It's called the Jolly Rogers Timeline set. And there's 2 parts. And it comes with decals for all the different airframes that the Jolly Rogers flew over their, nearly 80 long year career. And so as of the time of the recording of this audio, I only have 2 aircraft left in the collection. And these decals have been great. They're really thin, perfect register, and it's interesting. So for example, here you can see I'm applying the red bar to the national insignia as a separate element. They did that for all their decals, well, I should say for all the post-war decals, you have to add that red bar separate. So unique, but it works. Decals turned out great. They react well to Solvaset, and settled in pretty nicely. And so now we can go on to our next gloss coat, and prepare for the next step. So really we're just kind of assembling all the final parts here. I was going to keep weathering to a minimum. Like I mentioned earlier, these just really didn't get that dirty. So I wasn't going to do like a big panel wash. I wasn't really going to add chipping. I will eventually add some exhaust staining because, as long as the airplane's flying, it's going to be producing exhaust. It's going to have some exhaust staining. So I'll end up doing that just with the airbrush. So you can see how the landing gear actually attaches to the middle, the center part of that wheel well, as opposed to like the very outside edges, which you would normally expect. And that's just kind of part of how the way it folds in, where it folds in on itself, and quite unique. So drop tank goes on, and ordnance. So the bombs and rockets were pretty simple. They didn't come with any decals or anything in the kit, so I kind of had to hand paint some of those decals. So here you can see I'm just going to add in some of that exhaust staining, and Again, just really trying to keep it to a minimum. I didn't want it super pronounced. So we just started off with a little bit of gray, and then I dry brushed in a little bit of this earth color, just to kind of give it some neat color. So rockets going on. Obviously, these were used as a ground attack aircraft during the Korean conflict. I should say another gripe about the kit is it does come with parts for the cannons, but they looked bizarre, weird. So here I'm just using some round styrene stock of the appropriate diameter to replicate the cannons. And I chose to add these at the very end just because I knew I would break them off. If I added them at the very beginning, they would have been broken off by now. So rather than save myself the headache of having to re-glue them and all that stuff, just add them at the end. Much easier. So just a little bit of black and then a little bit of dry brush of gunmetal, kind of highlight the cannons there, and we're just about done here. So I left the propeller just as a push fit, and which is normally I always try to glue the propeller on, but there we go. It's a great little kit. If you want a fun little weekend build and don't want to think too much, I recommend this kit. If you're a fan of the Bearcat, definitely get the kit. And it does come with 2 paint schemes in the box, a bright yellow one, and then a dark sea blue like this one. I can't really vouch for the kit decals because I didn't use them. But the kit itself, great little kit. Like I said, missing some detail from the back side of the engine there. But I mean, honestly, you could get away with it because you really can't see it. So I'd recommend this kit, and it was cheap too. Just blowing on the propeller with the air compressor. But anyways, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, see you later.